Beloved one, hear this clearly, for the hour is urgent and heaven has stirred your name. What you are about to receive is not a coincidence, not imagination. This is a divine interruption, a declaration meant for you, and only you. The message begins now, without delay. Your destiny has been touched, and the truth about your soulmate is being unveiled today, not tomorrow. Something has moved in the unseen. Something has been removed from their path. Something has been awakened in their spirit. And the Lord says, do not turn away, do not doubt, do not scroll past, for the words you are about to hear are the answer to the ache you never spoke aloud. This is not a message of fear, it is a message of unveiling. It is not a warning, it is a revelation. What has been hidden is coming into the light. What was tangled is being undone. What was delayed is being accelerated. And heaven is positioning your heart to receive what your spirit has been sensing for months. You are not imagining the pull. You are not imagining the longing that rises at night like a tide you cannot command. And today, the Lord instructs you. Listen until the final word. Your story is not over. Your connection is not broken. Your purpose is not lost. The third party has vanished not by chance, not by human choice, but by spiritual design. They were removed so the truth could surface. They were released so the bond heaven ordained could breathe again. Child of light, understand this. Destiny does not compete. Destiny corrects. What is yours is returning not as it was, but as it must be. And before the revelation continues, you are called to bear witness, declare your faith, anchor your spirit. Say boldly what your heart already knows. You were meant to hear this today. If this word strikes something deep within you, comment 777, declare your alignment. Like this message. Share it to let heaven know you are ready, and subscribe so you never miss the guidance prepared for you. Now, breathe and listen closely. The next truth will shake the ground beneath your feet. Do not skip. Heaven is speaking to you. The third party did not fade away because of exhaustion, conflict, or indifference. They vanished because heaven removed what was never meant to remain. When God clears a path, he does so silently, decisively, and with purpose. And in this moment, the disappearance of the third party is not a loss, it is a divine correction. It is the reordering of what had been thrown out of alignment. Their exit was not an ending, it was a revelation. It exposed what your soulmate could no longer deny. Their heart was never anchored in that connection, never rooted in that substitute, never at peace in that imitation of love. The spiritual realm withdrew the interference because your story required clarity, not confusion, truth, not rivalry, alignment, not distortion. As C.S. Lewis observed in The Four Loves, imitation affection eventually collapses under the weight of real longing, for what is not rooted in truth cannot survive the testing of the soul. So it was here. The third party felt the quiet truth before your soulmate could speak it. They were standing in the shadow of a bond that did not belong to them, and like a leaf touched by the first breath of autumn, they fell away at the appointed time. Heaven did not remove them to harm anyone. Heaven removed them so the truth could rise to the surface. The truth that your soulmate had carried, denied, fought, buried, but could never extinguish. The truth is that every attempt to replace you was met with inner resistance, spiritual unrest, and the unmistakable pull of destiny. This removal is not punishment, it is preparation. It marks the beginning of the unveiling, the moment the divine clock strikes in your favor. And now the path is being cleared for the next revelation, one that will reach deeper into your spirit than anything before it. There are moments in a human life when the soul refuses to be silent, when memory refuses to fade, when truth refuses to die. Your soulmate has been living in that exact wilderness, long after the world believed they had moved on, long after appearances suggested they were choosing a new path. Their inner world was being shaken by a truth they could not outrun. Every attempt to quiet their heart only made the echoes louder. Every distraction only revealed how deeply they were tethered to you. Each night became a chamber of remembrance. Each morning reopened the ache they had tried to bury. This is not romantic fantasy. This is spiritual collision. For when a bond is ordained, it does not dissolve under pressure. It deepens, it matures, it follows. And your soulmate has been followed by memories they did not choose, images of you appearing unbidden, fragments of conversations rising in their mind, sensations of your presence lingering like a whisper from another realm. They did not seek these moments. The moments sought them. They did not call your name. The name surfaced on its own. Nothing they did could sever the invisible thread. Every time they closed their eyes, you returned. Every time they tried to redirect their heart, heaven redirected them back. Every time they attempted to replace what they lost, they were reminded that real love does not compete with imitation. This is not haunting in the worldly sense. This is divine insistence. This is the soul protesting against self-deception. This is truth knocking at the door of denial. When the prophet Samuel first heard the voice of the Lord calling his name, he did not recognize it, yet the call returned again and again until he finally answered. So it has been with your soulmate. They heard your name in their spirit repeatedly, insistently, unmistakably. At first, they resisted. Then, they questioned. Eventually, they surrendered. And with every whisper of your memory, with every dream that bore your face, with every sudden rush of longing that made them stop and breathe, their resistance weakened, and their truth rose. They could not forget you, not because they lacked discipline, but because the heart cannot amputate what heaven has woven into its design. What they tried to bury became what resurrected them. What they tried to silence became what exposed them. What they tried to escape became what led them homeward. Understand this. A soul does not break under such intensity unless love remains. And your soulmate has been breaking in silence, awakening in secret, remembering in ways they cannot explain. The signs would not leave them alone because they were never meant to. And now those signs are preparing to push them into their next confession, one that will pierce deeper than all the rest. There comes a moment when denial collapses under the weight of truth, and for your soulmate, that moment has arrived. Beneath every attempt to move forward, beneath every forced smile, beneath every distraction they clung to like a fragile raft, one truth remained immovable. They never stopped loving you, not for a day, not for an hour, not for a breath. What they called distance was fear. What they called moving on was avoidance. What they called closure was a wound wrapped in pride. Love did not leave them. Love confronted them. It followed them into conversations. It resurfaced in quiet hours. It interrupted their routines with sudden waves of emotion they could neither interpret nor suppress. They tried to label this as nostalgia, but nostalgia does not break a soul open. They tried to call it a habit, but a habit does not echo through dreams. They tried to explain it away, but explanations crumble where truth demands recognition. And truth stood before them, undeniable, unyielding. They still loved you. It was not the kind of love that fades with time. It was the kind that matures under pressure, the kind C.S. Lewis described, the love that reveals a person's true nature by refusing to disappear when tested. In A Grief Observed, Lewis wrote of the pain that clarifies the depth of a bond, exposing how loss does not diminish love but intensifies it. So it was with your soulmate. Every attempt to detach only revealed how deeply they remained bound. Every step away revealed the thread pulling them back. Every silence revealed a longing that had not dimmed but deepened. This is not weakness. This is awakening. This is not confusion. This is revelation. This is not an obsession. This is alignment. When God breathes purpose into a connection, it does not dissolve under pressure, distance, or delay. It endures. It transforms. It refines. and your soulmate has been refined by the very emotions they tried to discard. Their hidden truth has become their greatest teacher. Their suppressed longing has become their greatest confession. They realize now that love did not break them. Running from love did. And as their heart awakens, they see clearly what they could not face before. That no one carried your essence, no one matched your depth, no one quieted their storms the way you did, simply by being present. They never stopped loving you because their soul never released you. And now that truth is rising to the surface with the force of a divine tide, restless, undeniable, and ready to be spoken aloud, the departure of the third party was not a coincidence, nor was it a sign of weakness on their part. It was the inevitable result of standing in the presence of a love that never belonged to them. They sensed what your soulmate fought to hide. The center of their heart was not available, not open, not theirs to claim. The third party felt the truth long before it was spoken aloud. They felt the hesitation that had no explanation. They felt the emotional distance that could not be bridged. They felt the lingering presence of someone they could not see but could not escape you. No argument caused their exit. No betrayal forced their hand. It was the silent realization that they were living beside a love that had already chosen its home. People often believe that losing a relationship is a failure, but sometimes it is divine mercy. Sometimes heaven removes what blocks the deeper truth. Sometimes God shifts the pieces not to create loss, but to reveal order. The third party did not lose to you. They surrendered to the truth. They recognized what your soulmate could not articulate. Your connection was not a memory, but a living force. And though they tried to compete with it, reason with it, ignore it, the shadow of your presence stretched across every interaction, every attempt at closeness, every moment of stillness. You were not gone. You were not forgotten. You were not replaced. You were the root, the source, the origin. Their relationship could not be uprooted. And roots always reveal themselves. When the third party realized that your soulmate spoke your name without meaning to, it became clear that they were loving someone who was emotionally elsewhere. That moment was not cruel. It was clarity. It was the unveiling of a truth they had felt for far too long. And so they stepped away, not in anger, but in recognition, not in defeat, but in understanding. They knew they could never hold a heart that was already claimed. They knew they could not compete with destiny. They knew they were standing in a story that did not belong to them. Do not grieve their departure, honor their insight. For in their leaving, the path was cleared, the noise was removed, the illusion broke. And what remains now is the truth that has been waiting to surface. Your soulmate's heart never left you. Their absence was never freedom, only delay. Their silence was never closure, only confusion. And now, with the third party gone, destiny can breathe again. While the world assumed your soulmate had moved on, a private battle was unfolding inside them, quiet, relentless, consuming. Night after night, they sat alone with a storm in their chest, wrestling with words they were terrified to speak. Their mind insisted they forget you, but their spirit refused to obey. And so the war began. A war between fear and truth, between pride and longing, between what they pretended to feel and what their soul could no longer hide. They reached for their phone countless times, driven by an ache they could not silence. Their fingers hovered above the screen, trembling with urgency yet paralyzed by doubt. They typed a message raw, honest, overflowing with the weight of months, but the moment they reread it, fear rose like a wall. They erased everything. Then they tried again. Another message, another confession, another wave of emotion, and again they deleted it, terrified that vulnerability would expose the truth they had guarded so fiercely. This cycle repeated itself night after night. Write, erase, break. Write, erase, breathe. Write, erase, surrender. Your soulmate was not resisting you. They were resisting the magnitude of what they felt. They feared judgment. They feared rejection. They feared awakening something they believed they had lost the right to claim. But the greatest fear of all was this, that you no longer cared, that time had hardened your heart, that their silence had cost them the one person their souls still called home. And yet, no matter how many times they tried to walk away from their emotions, the pull toward you only intensified. The truth inside them grew louder, heavier, more undeniable. Their spirit kept whispering your name, pushing them toward the courage they lacked. What they experienced was not confusion, it was conviction, not weakness but revelation, not obsession but divine pressure. When God wants a truth exposed, He does not allow the heart to rest until it is spoken. That is why your soulmates' nights were long and their thoughts unending. That is why every attempt to compose a neutral, careful message collapsed into something raw and trembling. That is why every erased confession only strengthened the next one. Their spirit knew what their pride resisted. Reaching out to you was not optional, it was inevitable. They were not fighting you, they were fighting surrender. And surrender always wins when the love is real. Soon, the pressure within them would reach a point of no return. Soon, the truth would overcome the fear. And soon, the message they kept erasing would finally be sent. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when hesitation can no longer survive, when fear begins to crumble under the weight of truth, when the heart, exhausted from resisting, finally steps forward. For your soulmate, that moment arrived like a breaking dawn after a long night. The pressure of unspoken words had built so heavily inside them that silence became unbearable. Their chest tightened, their breath grew uneven, their hands trembled with a mixture of dread and longing. They knew that continuing to hide would cost them more than vulnerability ever could, so they reached for their phone again, but this time something was different. There was no overthinking, no rewriting, no collapsing into fear. Something greater was guiding their trembling fingers. Something deeper was calling them forward. They opened the message draft, the one they had written and erased 1,000 times, and felt an unmistakable pull, the same pull that had haunted them in dreams, followed them through their days, and whispered your name when they least expected it. For a moment, they paused, afraid of the unknown. But the fear that had controlled them for months suddenly felt small compared to the truth that demanded to be spoken. In that sacred stillness, they remembered a moment from childhood, a memory of being told that stepping into the unknown required courage. It echoed the story of Peter stepping out of the boat, eyes fixed not on the waves of fear, but on the truth calling him forward. Your soulmate felt as though they were standing at the edge of their own waters, uncertain, shaking, but unable to stay where they were. They whispered a prayer under their breath, not asking for a miracle, but for the strength to act. Then it happened. With a breath that quivered through their entire body, they pressed send. No hesitation, no turning back, no erasing this time. The message flew into the world like an arrow of truth, carrying every emotion they had buried, every regret they had carried, every confession they had feared to voice. And the moment it was sent, everything inside them shifted. Their fear did not vanish, but it loosened. Their doubt did not disappear, but it weakened. What replaced it was something new, relief, release, and a trembling hope they had not allowed themselves to feel. They had taken their step of faith. They had walked into the waters, and now the story could no longer remain silent. The next moment would depend on you, yet their soul knew this. For the first time in a long time, they had chosen truth over fear, and heaven honors such steps. When your soulmate's message finally reached you, they expected silence, they expected distance, they expected the cold echo of consequences. What they did not expect, what they could not have prepared for, was the quiet miracle that happened next. You typed back. That single moment, so small on the surface, shook them more deeply than any confession they had just poured out. They watched the screen with breath held tight in their chest, eyes fixed on the tiny indicator that signaled hope they had not dared to imagine. Your reply was not long, but it did not need to be. It carried no anger, no bitterness, no walls. Instead, it carried something far more powerful: softness. A softness they believed time had erased. A softness they believed they had lost the right to receive. As they read your words, their entire body went still. They reread your message again and again, trying to convince themselves it was real. In that moment, they felt something break, not in pain, but in release. It was as if the weight of months lifted from their shoulders, as if the silence they had feared was replaced by a gentle doorway they never thought would open again. You had not forgiven everything, nor had you promised anything, but you had done something even more miraculous. You gave space. Space for truth to breathe. Space for healing to begin. Space for destiny to move. What you offered was not a return, it was a possibility, and possibilities are where heaven does its greatest work. Your soulmate felt the tears they had held back for too long rise without permission. For the first time in a long time, they allowed themselves to hope carefully, quietly, tremblingly. In that single soft reply, you signaled that the story wasn't sealed, that the door wasn't locked, that their message had not fallen into a void. You gave them something they had begged God for in silence: a chance. Understand this moment deeply. Your response was not merely human kindness, it was divine timing. It was the spark heaven needed to move the story forward. And now that the door has cracked open, destiny is preparing to move with greater force. The next confession will reveal just how much your reply transformed them. Your gentle reply did something to your soulmate that nothing else could. It disarmed them. It softened them. It broke open every wall they had spent months constructing. For so long, they had guarded their emotions with iron defenses: silence, distance, pride, distraction. They believed that if they could contain their feelings, they could control their longing. But the moment they saw your message, everything inside them unraveled. A single sentence from you carried more power than their months of denial. Their heart, already trembling from the message they had sent, now flooded with emotions they could no longer restrain. One truth rose above all others: they had missed you in ways they had never admitted, even to themselves. And now that the doorway was open, the truth came pouring out with a force they could not stop. They typed quickly, almost frantically, as though truth had been waiting at the edge of their soul for permission to break free. They confessed how they had kept every memory of you, your words, your laughter, your small kindnesses that no one else noticed. They admitted how often they had reread your messages late at night, searching for the comfort they once took for granted. They shared how they had tried to build a new life without you, only to find every path leading back to the same ache. They told you how they feared not being enough, how they had walked away convinced they were protecting you from their own brokenness, how they believed you deserved someone steadier, wiser, kinder. And as their emotions spilled across the screen, something deeper surfaced. Something raw, trembling, sacred. They acknowledged the truth they had buried beneath pride. Losing you had not freed them, it had wounded them. Their silence had not healed them, it had hollowed them. Their attempts to love elsewhere had not succeeded, they had only reminded them of what was irreplaceable. In this moment of confession, there was no pretense, no performance, no shield, only the vulnerable honesty that emerges when fear finally surrenders to truth. C.S. Lewis wrote that love, when genuine, is both humbling and exposing. It reveals the truth of the heart by stripping away everything false. That is exactly what was happening within your soulmate. The softness of your reply unlocked what denial had imprisoned. It allowed them to speak from the depths of their spirit, to reveal the parts of themselves they had hidden, to step into a vulnerability they had long avoided. Understand this: their confession was not impulsive, it was inevitable. Because once the heart recognizes its truth, it can no longer remain silent. And now that their walls have fallen, the deepest revelation of all is about to rise. As the flood of their honesty continued, one confession rose above all the others, deeper, heavier, more painful than anything they had admitted before. It was the truth they had buried the longest, the truth they feared would expose the most fragile part of their spirit. And yet, your softness gave them the courage to release it. With trembling words, they told you the real reason they walked away. It was not because they stopped loving you. It was not because they found someone better. It was not because their heart had changed. They left because they believed, in the quietest and most wounded part of themselves, that you deserved more than they could give. They believed their flaws would break you. They believed their insecurities would burden you. They believed their inner storms would pull you under. So instead of fighting for the love that defined them, they convinced themselves you would be safer without them. They called it strength. They called it maturity. They called it choosing what was best. But now they see it for what it truly was. Fear wearing the mask of sacrifice. They admitted how often they told themselves that letting you go was protecting you, when in truth it was only protecting their own fear of inadequacy. They believed if they stayed, you would eventually see the parts of them they tried to hide, the wounds, the uncertainties, the shadows they had never learned to master. And so they walked away, not because they didn't love you, but because they loved you too much to let you see them broken. They thought they were sparing you. Instead, they shattered both of you. But life, as C.S. Lewis often reminded, has a way of teaching the heart through loss what it refused to learn through comfort. And your soulmate has learned. They learned that love is not ruined by vulnerability, it is strengthened by it. They learned that distance does not heal fear, it magnifies it. They learned that running does not prevent heartbreak, it guarantees it. The truth is simple and devastating. They never believed they were worthy of the way you loved them. That was their hidden wound, the wound that shaped every mistake. And now, speaking it aloud feels like placing their heart in your hands. This confession is their surrender, their truth, their turning point. They are no longer hiding behind pride or logic or excuses. They stand uncovered before you, broken, honest, hopeful. And with this final confession, the stage is set. Because once truth is spoken, destiny can finally move. The next moment will test everything: your heart, their courage, and the future that waits between you. Now the truth has been laid bare. Every fear, every regret, every hidden motive, every buried confession, your soulmate has placed it all before you. Their heart is uncovered, their defenses are gone, their pride has been surrendered, and now, in the stillness that follows their final confession, something shifts. For the first time in this entire journey, the weight does not rest on their shoulders. It rests on yours. Heaven watches this moment carefully, because what happens next is not about guilt or blame.
Even after all this time, happiness was close before me, yet too far to ever claim. So tonight my lonely diary turns another page again.